ladies and gentlemen, welcome here. Welcome back, I should say. Hope you'd have a fun and relaxing summer break. My name is Wes Bryan. I'm one of the board members here at the North Central Florida chapter of AITP. And we're meeting in person here at ITProTV in the studios here in Gainesville, Florida. And we have several members and guests here that are present. This meeting is being streamed on YouTube. So if you like what you see, remember to subscribe to our channel and leave us a comment in the comment section. Today we're delighted because we have our host, Mr. Justin Dennison here. He is also a member, I should say, actually you work with ITProTV, let's get that right for sure. And his topic of the day is going to be the top 5 DevOps blunders. And we're delighted to have you here, so thank you for being here. And if you're a developer being pushed into maybe a DevOps role, or maybe you're a manager and you're wondering, if the ROI will justify the cost, or maybe you're just interested in what will be the DevOps buzz or what it's all about, well, you're in the right place. AITP's mission, a little bit about us, is to be the voice and the advocate for technology or the technology industry, attracting and enriching professionals through industry insight, networking, and education. And, well, we've been around for a little bit. July 1971, I believe, your North Florida chapter of AITP. We're located right here in Gainesville, Florida, and we're dedicated to the core values of ethics and professionalism in the field of data processing. We serve our community by hosting these presentations right here in the studios on things like technology, IT management, host social and networking events, and we offer hands-on training, tours, and education. Keep in mind that our next meeting is going to be scheduled for Tuesday, October 22nd, and we invite you to meet with us in person or maybe even online. So definitely check us out online as well. And we also encourage you to become a member here with us here at AITP. And if you need more information, by all means, hop on over to our website at AITP-NCFL.org. And, well, without further ado, Justin, thank you for being here, and it's your stage, sir.
All right, well, I'm going to go ahead and take over at this point. And yeah, Wes told you we're here for the top 5 DevOps blunders, the issues that may plague you. Now, I'm going to be up front with you. I'm from a developer breed, a stock, if you will, so my viewpoints may be coming from a different place than yours. Now, before we get started, I think it's probably best for me to tell you a little bit about myself. Been in IT for about 7 years. I've had a meandering path, if you will, in my professional career. I was a physics major, an engineer for a while, and taught some high school, all the while doing computers. Then I was a software developer, and then I've been doing some admin things all over the place. And I'm currently an edutainer at ITProTV. I have a plethora of certifications. I have a few more on here, but that's not why you're here. You're not here to hear about me. I have a little bit of a southern twang. Maybe that's intriguing. But really, we're here to talk about DevOps. Before we get started, though, something to ponder. I'm going to ask you a question. Now, I may not be able to see you, but it's probably good to think about, internalize this, and, well, the local studio audience, hopefully they'll engage as well. So, how much training have you received in DevOps deployments? 1, you've attended training and have a good understanding of what your DevOps responsibilities are. I have studied independently and have a good idea of what I need to do. I'm living life one Google search at a time, or wait, there's training on this? So kind of think about this. Where do you lie in that spectrum? And those of you out in the audience, if you'll just hold up 1, 2, 3, or 4, kind of where you lie. Yeah, I see people near and dear to my heart here with us. One Google search at a time. I tell you, that's how I started, mainly because I was building software. And incidentally, I kind of got shoved into some ops roles. Now, I will forewarn you, DevOps is a loaded term. DevOps can mean a set of structures, a set of processes where we're supposed to work collaboratively. Ops, development, security. There's even NetSec, DevOps, NetSec, DevOps. That's crazy stuff anymore. We're going to be talking about developers and operations, admins and the people who break stuff, also known as developers, how they work. Now, DevOps blunder number 1, system updates. System updates are tricky business because they can lead to things like that Equifax breach, right? Apache struts, it's out of date. Whoopsie daisy. It'll be fine. No one will figure it out. And lo and behold, they did, because they did not apply security patches. Now, sometimes this is purely by oversight, right? Oops, I forgot. I don't have well-established processes. It could also be like an experience that I had. Hey, Justin, we're building this application. We're running Ubuntu 12. We should really update to Ubuntu 16.04. I'm like, well, that's a pretty big jump. But let's see what happens. And effectively what I did is break our entire development environment. And I think sometimes that's the pushback, right? We have this development or staging server, or even production. But what if I break something? Don't touch it, right? If I run updates, things could go horribly awry that interrupt service to our customers, or it just makes my life harder and now I have to scramble. Let's just keep the status quo. But unfortunately, that leads to some other issues, such as the breach. In addition to, we can be lulled into this false sense of security because as we move to the cloud, we go, oh, well, everything's taken care of for me, right? I just launch an EC2 instance or a GCP instance, Azure instance, everything's good. They're going to take care of the updates. They take care of the updates if you use a pre-built image up to that release point, right? So, boom, EC2, we're good. Everything's up to date. It's based on CentOS. Awesome. Everything, we're good. But you can actually spin one up probably right now and go, what do I need to update? And there are updates to be run, possibly kernel updates, security fixes. If you're running Apache struts, probably security fixes right now. I do this on a daily basis. I actually do development on a Linux-based machine. I run updates almost every day for a couple of reasons. I want to make sure I'm secure personally, but number two, to know what is breaking, what is going awry as I'm building applications. So those updates are incredibly important. DevOps blunder number two, though, could be iffy stuff. Security and permissions. Taking a developer view on this, I'll be honest with you, I tend to go the lazy route. I go the easy route and go, it'll be fine. Just unlock the door and open it up and cut a hole in the wall and everybody can come in and get what they want. And that actually happens with S3 buckets a great deal of the time. You hear, oh, there's 30 million financial records found on the internet. And I suspect that some of it is driven along by, I'm building an application. I need to store this somewhere in the cloud, or maybe it's even in a personal data center, and my application needs to do that. Or this little script needs to do that. Well, how do I authenticate? Do I get a token? That's hard. I just need to store this. It's a long name. No one will ever find it. So you just open it up. You say, anybody can read, write. It's all good. I used a really long name, or maybe even like an MD5 hash, which is highly secure, and we're all good, right? But the problem is there's crawlers that just look for those, and whoopsie daisy. Now, I will say, originally when you created a bucket, you just go click, 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 everything's wide open. Since some of this has started to occur and become more and more prevalent, there were financial records from Walmart, there were several financial records from other retail establishments just found in S3 buckets that were wide open. It has become more and more difficult to just open it up to the world. There are additional settings other than this create bucket screen, in particular with AWS, and I know Azure follows a similar suit. Haven't delved into GCP so much. You have to opt in on several different pages to open it wide to the internet. It is enforcing better security practices, which is good. But you have stricter permissions, controls at hand in these cloud providers. This is a bucket policy inside of S3 that allows you to say, you can only access this if you're from a particular source IP. And okay, well, what does that mean? Even if it is open, right? You want anybody, let's just say this building where we're giving the presentation. Anybody here can access that S3 bucket. We have some assets, maybe some pictures, awesome cat videos, but they're top secret. You can access them here. But what about at my house? No, we got that locked off. But you have to know how to write these policies. You have to be aware of it. And you have to be willing to go through that a little extra in order to go, all right, developers, you can access it at work, or we're going to set up an additional bucket policy where EC2 instance or Elastic Beanstalk applications or even Lambda functions are going to be able to reach into that S3 bucket programmatically. But you can't do it at home. We're not going to open it up to the internet. And we're not going to give you the ability to change that because we want to make sure we have security at heart, right? And that's an important thing. Well, security permissions. All right. That sounds a little easier. Maybe it's not as scary or as difficult as we make it out. But I will tell you, DevOps blunder number 3 was the bane of my existence when I was building software and kind of got pushed into this, oh, we also need you to deploy this and set it up, and it's all good, right? OS hardening. I knew nothing about it. I said, oh, cool, we ran updates, everything looks good. I mean, we shared the admin password, but that's only internal. No one will ever figure out password 1234. And I really need this port open, right? 8080, 5000, 50, 5005, 22, 23, 25 spam servers abroad. That doesn't really work. And the problem was I didn't know at the current time what I needed to do. And, well, you can end up with crazy things like this. Oops, there's a malware. And now someone's got a lot of cryptocurrency. And this is a very minute, right? Kind of this is bad, but it's not taking over Netflix or Tesla or anything of that nature. But it could if they just leave things unhardened. But what would have really been helpful to me in particular is to know about hardening guides, right? Now, Raspbian, which is used on Raspberry Pis, is typically, you're not going to find many hardening guides. You're not going to find anything that is meant to be a production level deployment. I'm not to say that you don't have IoT devices or these small embedded devices that can't be that, but you just, it's up, it's easy, you can get going, beautiful. But really you should pick a more appropriate distribution or a more appropriate platform. In this case, this is a little snippet from the Red Hat hardening guide where it says, you should check these things. Make sure you don't have this turned off. Oh, no, you don't need passwordless sudo access. Make sure you're using SSH keys. Turn these ports off. Oh, these are the firewall rules. If I'd have known about this when I was a developer, being asked to do some of these operation kind of tasks, I would have felt more comfortable. I'd have been more likely to do them, to pursue them, to make them my own, and that would have been great. In addition to, if you're working as part of, I'm talking in the context of a small team, right? And by small team, it was me. But if you're working in a larger organization where maybe you do have dedicated ops, dedicated developers, well, this is a common ground. Okay, Justin, what are you doing? Well, I have this port open, but we don't really need it open because it's just looking on the loopback address. And I'm going to proxy that through a web server. We're good to go. Let's turn off port 8000, port 5000, whatever it may be. Well, do you need FTP access? Nope, cut it off, right? So that's that collaboration portion. But a lot of times you just go, somebody will take care of it. And I think this is made further, it's kind of made further difficult by containerization and the promise of, it's a container. Even if they do get in there, who cares? But as of recent, there's been common exploits where people have escaped that sequestering and gained root access to the underlying OS. That's no good, right? And actually the containerization applies to the previous two topics as well. It's in a container. Who cares about updates? It's perfectly fine. Well, we've made it through 3. I know you're titillated. You're on the edge of your seat. You're like, these are good. I need to write these down. And you should. But we got 2 more. And performance tuning. You go, wait a minute, that's not what I was thinking about. There's no way this is an issue. But actually, you end up with things like this. Target said, we have a great sale on Cyber Monday. It's going to blow your minds. Everything's just going to be slash bottom prices. But they weren't prepared. They had an e-commerce application that was possibly taking payments that wasn't ready to perform appropriately, scaling, right? Modifying transactions, making calls to databases, whatever it may be, and it went down. And that may not seem like a big deal. That's an inconvenience to your consumer. Number one, if you actually go read about some of the origination of AWS and some other services, the reason Amazon started building those services is because they did a case study, and for every minute that their site is down, they lose an astronomical amount of money. I'm not going to quote it off the top of my head because I don't remember the exact number, but it's very real from a business perspective. It is inconveniencing to us, But if I was on the opposite side, right? If I was the developer building these, or I was the ops person maintaining these, I don't want this looks bad on me. Oh, well, you weren't ready. You knew we were going to have a lot of customers. Why weren't you doing your job? And to that, I say, do know you have performance monitoring. It's built in to a lot of cloud providers, right? If we're talking about AWS in particular, because that tends to be my area of better expertise, I get some default monitoring out of the CPU utilization, some network traffic. I can look at that. Not only that, I have appropriate architectures that I can pick from. Load balancing, appropriate horizontal scaling, and if I plan and know about that and do some load testing, then hopefully that won't happen, right? Now, one of the things that we see, I've seen, and I've been guilty of, so I'm not necessarily pointing fingers and wagging my finger like that, is picking an appropriate instance, picking an appropriate set of resources necessary for our application. I use T2 instances inside of AWS for testing. T for testing. Could you get away for small jobs like these repeated, one-off kind of like cron jobs with a T2 instance? Possibly. But should I set up an e-commerce platform with T2 instances? Maybe not. Maybe I should instead use i3, which is for high I/O, right? If I'm serving a bunch of images, collecting a bunch of data I need to write to disk, I have general purpose ones like the M class. I have the C class, which, if someone's making a request, I'm doing a number of computations to give them back something. Pick an appropriate instance. That'll save you a lot of issues. Also, when you go to pull the old switcheroo, right, you go, we accidentally used T's. I need to make it M's or C's or... Well, if you pick it and plan for it up front, it saves you a lot of headache on the other end. And well, as a developer, the next one, I'll be honest with you, I was like, whatever. I don't care about it at all. Monitoring and logging. Used to turn it off. I've actually heard Ruby on Rails developers go, if you turn off logging, you get better performance. Which may be true. Probably is. But we have some shenanigans. We have things like, people are going to take over all my EC2 instances or my compute nodes and turn them into cryptocurrency miners. Tesla, in this case, actually found that their Amazon cloud account had been compromised. People were churning away Bitcoins, Monero, Dogecoin, whatever it was. Cryptocurrencies abound. But they had monitoring and logging turned on, and somebody noticed. That's great. But if you have it turned off, you might get a bill in your email, or someone will get a bill in their email, for a ridiculous amount of resources. Now, this is impactful a lot of times on larger businesses because you've turned off some of those default limits. Like if I sign up for an account, a lot of times I have limits that are in place for my safety for things just like this. I accidentally expose credentials on the internet for whatever reason. As developers, we use version control. We do that. As ops people, sometimes you use version control, sometimes you don't. Maybe it's taped to a keyboard by somebody else that you weren't anticipating. It happens. But in large companies, a lot of times those limits are turned off, right? Netflix, Tesla, they might have thousands, tens of thousands of possible resources at hand that they can spin up at an instance to cover scale, computational power, whatever it may be. And actually, IT Pro was thankful for monitoring as well, because at one point we noticed, well, all right, we have an average response time of, hold on a second. Something's going bleep. And our metrics started to just skyrocket. And notice right here, there have been 14,520 critical errors. Now, this is in Heroku. Heroku, great service. I don't know if it still is. It was originally built on top of AWS. Makes things easy. It does have monitoring built in. And it's a good thing, too, because we were actually getting a bunch of DDoS shenanigans from IoT devices. And actually, this is a map of where these originated from, all over the world. We wouldn't have known that without the monitoring and metrics in place. We did notice some user experience issues, right, where our sign-in page got really, really slow, but by diving in to our metrics, We went, oh, well, we should look a little further. And we noticed these are coming from some weird places. So we should update our firewall rules. Or actually a web application firewall. Turned it on, set up a CAPTCHA page, and now, oh, we just blocked out all of these. And these actually ended up being from like small webcam devices and like thermostats that didn't have updates and weren't hardened and were able to be compromised with malware. And now they're a giant botnet. Well, that's good for us. We had monitoring and logging turned on, right? So from the top, it seems like there's a lot that we have to undergo. I don't want to work with ops people. I just build the applications, throw it over the fence, they'll take care of everything. And then the other side, they're like, they're always breaking stuff. We're going to do updates, and then they're going to whine about it. But if you just work together, it makes things a lot easier. If you know, hey, we should make sure we got monitoring and logging. We need to harden that OS. We need to make sure that we have all those updates applied, and you're not opening the door for everybody. Everything will go a lot smoother. Well, that's kind of my rundown on that. And I'll say, in the beginning of my career, I was guilty of most of these. Open the door, throw away the key. Everybody should have admin privileges. OS hardening, what's that? But it'll all be good. Now, at this point, I'm going to go ahead and open the floor for questions. Sure. She's going to haze me.
So in Azure, we have a feature called Azure Advisor that will notify of any unused resources. Does AWS have something comparable?
Of unused resources?
Yes.
So there's
over-allocated use.
So you can set up CloudWatch alarms that will tell you about overutilized resources, like your CPU utilization is really high, your I/O utilization is really high. You can push custom metrics into it to look for like memory utilization, and you can respond to that. You can actually set that up to be a scaling event. There's also, they have crazy names, so I'd have to look it up. There is one where you can opt in and it will check to make sure you have valid compliance. Like if you have certain compliance requirements, like you've run updates, you don't have any configuration drift and the sort. I think it's actually called System Manager. So those would also tell you, hey, this one over here is doing some weird stuff. You should probably check it out. And that would also go into the alarm system.
How would you set up in a medium or good size entity the actual physical DevOps environment? In other words, would you have, because there is a kind of a functional wall between what the people do, and would you prefer to have someone who's got kind of their feet in both worlds, or do you want to set up like communication on a regular basis between the developers and operators so that everyone's on the same page of what the goal of the DevOps is? Or is there another hybrid thing that I'm kind of overlooking?
So for me, and I'll be upfront, this is more from a developer bent. Something that we did just within our focus was I would build a feature, I would push it to something like GitHub, Bitbucket, whatever it may be, and do a pull request, and it had to be approved by at least 2 other people, right? I propose, if you really want to take this, is you all need to get together, right? Maybe you're not familiar with version control or these processes, and establishing a set of processes that are based around this, whether it be Git, Subversion, or an email system, and say, if I submit a feature and it has ramifications, not only do I need developers to sign off on it, I need an ops person to sign off on it. Hey, you're opening this wide open with permission. You can't do that, right? And to some extent, you need to drag in security professionals, your network engineers. That would be my proposition, mainly because you can establish a well-defined set of procedures and processes that allow people to review other ones across their domains. So you're not strongly segmenting. Well, the developers are doing their things and they're going to throw it over the wall and it's all good. Well, when the developers are doing their review, there's an ops person there doing review for that. And likewise, if using things like configuration as code, Chef, Puppet, Ansible, SaltStack, the ops individuals can employ those same processes, and a developer can do a review there and say, hey, I notice you're changing this port, or you're changing this installation or this version. This is going to have an impact on me. So it can be a yes or a no, or I can prepare for it. So I find that to be the easiest, is to get on common ground using a common set of technologies. I'm not to say that that's the only way that can be done.
I'd like to follow up on that. If, let's say, you're a very small developer and you're doing almost all of your business on the cloud with AWS or whoever, and so basically your ops people are in the cloud too, from your point of view. So is this a skill the developer should learn in terms of, we have the 5 things to look for now. Is sort of a communication, communication seems to be the key here between the different constraints that are being put on safe development.
And correct me if I'm wrong, if I'm misunderstanding your question. Effectively, is it a good idea, let's say I'm a remote developer, and I'm working for a company that they have a very centralized ops team, but my application development is, let's say I'm in Gainesville and they're in Seattle. Is it important for me to learn some of their terminologies, their techniques, their realm, effectively, right? That was the question at hand, right?
Broadly, or maybe you're just a 1 or 2 person shop of developers who's being completely supported by Amazon. You throw out of this application that could have implications on their operations, and you've basically got this huge communication gap because they have no idea who you are, and they're just a black box to you in terms of who's actually taking care of this. How do I speak to them? What language do they speak in terms of technology? Everything in technology has multiple labels, it seems like. So.
Yeah, I think it's very important for us to take the onus upon ourselves as technology individuals to no longer sequester ourselves. To say, I'm a developer only. I mean, I used to do that, but I've taken it upon myself to learn a bunch of operations, to learn, hey, well, what are you talking about when you're talking about firewall rules? Like, why is that important? Why should I care? Or OS hardening. I think it's important to definitely cross-train, because that communication breakdown, I think, ultimately led to, well, we'll let ops take care of it, or let developers take care of it, because that's their realm and I don't really understand that. I don't think that's a valid excuse anymore, because as a technologist, you always have to be learning something new, and it doesn't hurt you. It can only help you by saying, well, I'm not going to become an expert, right? I'm not going to build software if I'm an ops person, but I can have a discussion with you. I can talk to you about my needs. And on the flip side, a developer can say, I can have a discussion with you, and maybe I'm not the one provisioning this or maintaining this, but I can understand the importance of firewall rules, OS hardening, system updates, and the sort. I think it's a very important to move between those realms, even if it's not for expertise.
Justin, thank you. A lot of members of AITP are young. They're students, either changing careers or they're just getting into the industry. You mentioned a lot of School of Hard Knocks lessons that you've learned over the years. Is there an easier way? Is there some kind of training available?
Oh, wow, we're getting into some deep territory. Personally, I'm a big fan of School of Hard Knocks, mainly because it provides context for why I should care. I can tell you till I'm blue in the face about why you should do X, Y, or Z. But until you have, we're being DDoS'd, or our website went down, or I just got a $3,000 bill from AWS because I accidentally pushed my AWS command line credentials to the cloud, it's difficult. Now, with that said, right, we're supposed to learn from the people who come before us. I say look for mentors, look for individuals that you aspire to be or have skills that you do not, and approach them and say, hey, I have this problem. I want to see if I can preempt any of the issues. What are your thoughts? You may still make mistakes, but it's going to help you not make horrible mistakes. Yeah.
All right, Justin, we actually have a question coming in from the YouTube channel. We appreciate it. So Dad Williams asks, is there a standard set of rules and training, or is it, figure it out as you go?
So I'll be up front with you. This is not necessarily my expertise. There are some some training and rigid frameworks for employing DevOps practices. Actually, one of them is the DevOps Institute, and you can get started just by learning how this all goes together. I learned it as I went, mainly because it was a loaded term. People don't necessarily always understand, oh, what do you mean by DevOps? Because it's not just the technologies that we've talked here. It's a thought process. It's a mindset, if you will. I'm going to work together collaboratively, break down those walls. A good place to start is probably the DevOps Institute, DevOps Foundation, just to get an idea of the processes surrounding that. But also, just start doing it. And you don't have to go all in. Maybe you just start with, hey, once a week we're going to do a review. Get together and talk about, hey, here's what I'm thinking about. I'm going to put it in a Docker container. What are your thoughts, ops person? How does this affect you? And just having those communications, I think, will go a long way.
All right. Well, Justin, we appreciate your time. Are there any other questions here? Okay, we addressed the one there.
I think there's one right above it.
It does. It says, is there a cost or benefit factor? Is it all in, or can we do it in levels?
You can definitely start to phase it in. If you, I have found if you go all in right from the start and you go, this is what we're going to do, then buy-in is difficult. And if you don't have buy-in, then it's no different than just saying, I'm a developer, you're an ops person, and we're going to do our own thing. So,
all right.
Yeah, just start phasing it in and keep your fingers on the pulse, if you will, of how it's affecting your organization.
All right. Well, any other questions from the audience here? It looks like we, and thank you out there. Oh, looks like we do have one.
Uh-oh. I'm getting hazed again.
Do you think introducing serverless computing, that it's still important? Let's say that's your realm and that's where you're focusing on, and you're not ever even touching a box, or your code is never touching a box. Is it still important to understand and know concepts, like you had mentioned, taking the time to get to learn things like how firewalls work and so forth, so that you can bake that into the code?
Yes, it is. Personally, I'm going to dive into opinion here to some extent. Or maybe not. Maybe it's objectively fact. I could tout the serverless. There's still servers somewhere, right? Which is true. There's still someone managing these services, still managing this infrastructure. But on top of that, the updates, right? At the application level, those updates still matter. I may have a denial of service, like a regular expression denial of service, or an injection attack that's part of that serverless function that's running. I don't want someone to feed me bad SQL, and even though I'm not on a server, it's still doing a bad thing. In addition to, I need to know how's it interacting with the resources in my cloud environment, if I'm doing cloud environment. Or there are ways to host function as a service or serverless entities on premises. That's still true. Does it have access to everything? Does it have modified permissions? Am I logging or monitoring that? All of those still apply in the context of serverless. So I would say still do it and know these things because that landscape is rapidly changing.
All right. Well, Justin, we appreciate you being here. Any other questions out here in the audience? Well, we do appreciate our audience members here being here. We also appreciate you joining us on YouTube. I do want to remind you that our next meeting is scheduled for Tuesday, October 22nd, and we invite you to meet with us in person. And if you're not sure what that entails or how to go about that, I encourage you to go over to AITP-NCFL.org. Remember, you can, on our events location, you can find out what the next presentation, what time it starts, when it is. Also keep in mind that if you want maybe a little bit farther out than that, we also have the IT calendar as well. At the bottom of every one of those pages, if you would like to be a member, just click the Join Now button and you can become a member here of the CompTIA AITP North Central Florida chapter. Remember that if you want to see and visit one of of these presentations with us, you don't have to be a member. You can be a guest, but we definitely encourage you to join. So, Justin, we appreciate you being here. We also want to make sure that you like and subscribe to our YouTube channel and visit us on Facebook as well. We always have to put those in there too. We'd love to get some interaction with you there. Let us know, maybe you've got a presentation that you'd like to see coming up. Well, leave us a comment and we can see if we can make it happen. So, on behalf of myself and everybody at CompTIA AITP North Central Florida chapter, thanks for watching. Thank you, Justin.